Welcome back, everybody. On behalf of the CFC Foundation Board, I want to thank you for being part of this training these last couple of weeks. We're in the home stretch at this point. We have today, and then tomorrow will be the last full day of trainings. Now, today we have two primary sessions for you. Here at 2 o'clock, we're going to talk about systems in reports with the CFC. And at 3 o'clock, we'll reconvene and go into breakout rooms. Nonprofits will have a CFC 301 session, and federal employees will go into a room where we'll go through best practices and some innovations in the campaign. Before we start the 2 p.m. session, I want to let you know we're going to throw a poll up. We want to see who we have here in the room. What part of the CFC world do you represent? So please take a moment to answer that poll for us. And while you do that, I want to introduce our first speaker of the day. We have Chris Fisher, who is with the Central Campaign Administrator, the CCA. You probably hear us mention quite a bit. He works for Task, and he is the Director of Government Contracts and Enterprise Solutions. You're in great hands with Chris, and I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Well, thanks, Curtis. Today, I'm going to kind of just walk us through some of the new features that we're unrolling with the upcoming pledge solicitation period starting, and then also some reminders out to the group as you're starting to dig in, see donations rolling in so that the audience knows the resources you have, the reports, the data that's available for you, so that you and your organization, whether you're a charity, an LFCC member, outreach coordinator, can kind of use that data effectively to grow donations, target where you need to be, evaluate who your donor base is, and kind of just make smart decisions for your organization based off of that. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump us in. I'll probably start with a few kind of housekeeping reminders, knowing there's new charities part of the system, new people who are engaging, and just kind of remind you of what's available today, and then take you into some of the new data feature set that we're going to be unrolling here starting in September. Go ahead. Go ahead and pull us up. Can everybody see the charity application screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and sign us in. I do have a few caveats for the group. So I am logging into one of our test environments just to center everybody. It's going to look and feel a lot like your production systems you might be familiar with. I will also caveat, because we've got a wide range of different user groups here. A lot of the functionality I'll be speaking to is applicable to all of you, but how you may access or some of the views you're going to see might be slightly different due to the role I'm in, or due to you being a charity versus an LFCC member. So I'll try and call that out as I go. But I think first off, we'll just go ahead and kind of start in here, and I'll jump into kind of one of my independent charity applications here. So for the charities in the group, I think you guys are all kind of familiar with this screen. And when I click in and I click on my charity name, what I come into here is my my dashboard for my charity. So it's my view where I'm going to be able to see kind of end to end what I've applied for, where my donations are coming in for, and all of my data. So, while we're entering into the pledge season, there's still a lot of activity kind of coming here in the charity application system, where you're going to consume that data and be able to see real time some of the results as we go through the campaign. So you'll see we kind of have this organized here. You're probably very familiar with the application and listing sections already. As we start getting into the pledge season, we're going to start caring more about kind of the pledges that are rolling in my section here, and then ultimately when that campaign ends, start seeing those donations come in real time from those donors as I'm getting, my monthly distribution that comes out of the campaign. So if I'm coming in as a charity and I want to see what my results are, we're going to start seeing a 2024 campaign open here in September. So it'll look the same. It'll be another line item for me to see. And at a high level, I'm going to be able to keep a real time, view of what my total pledges are raised, how many donors I'm getting in through those pledges. And then I'll be able to drill in a lot more detail. So I now kind of get a little bit more detailed view where I can start seeing what the makeup of my pledges are. I can see, I have a certain percentage in one-time gifts that people are given right in that campaign. And then I have a bulk of my donors coming in as a recurring pledge that I'm going to start seeing on that monthly return as we start collecting payroll and other recurring payment donations. Down below, I'm also going to be able to see that demographic of where are my donors, right? So in the example of this organization, I have a lot of my donors coming in from the national capital area, but I can still target and see the base that's growing across the US. And so as I'm looking as a charity, where events are popping up, what makes the most sense for my organization, I can start seeing there might be other areas of the country that I need to focus on, even if my base is, right in that DC area. So that's a good kind of high level gut check that you always be able to come in every day. We'll refresh these totals for each of the organizations so you can start seeing that money drive in. You'll be able to see donors, volunteer time, the dollar breakdowns. And then if you need to get a little bit more, you can download some of these reports that become available to you. So we have a raw pledge data report. So this is a report that's been out there for a couple of years. I don't think a lot of people always know it exists. So this truly is your raw data. It's going to give you all the details about that actual pledge and in an anonymized format. So I'll switch over and just show you real quickly what that looks like for everybody so you can kind of consume it. It's going to come out in an Excel format, and it truly is going to give me most of the detail regarding that pledge outside of who that specific individual is. So it's going to be anonymized data, but I'm going to be able to see the dollar amounts that are being pledged to me. I'm able to see the actual campaign weeks that they're coming in on, whether they're coming in through the online system, whether I have paper donations that are coming in, or if I have people using that mobile app. We're also going to give you the detail of their department, agency, and office, their payment type. So you can see, am I getting a recurring payroll donation? Am I getting those one-time card or check transactions, to really give you a feel of what your typical donor demographic looks like. And so, like I said, this data is kind of refreshed for you on a daily basis. So every morning you'll come in, you'll be able to see the results from every day prior to that in the campaign. So make sure you're kind of coming in, you're looking at your reports, and you're knowing what data is available there. So that's kind of a housekeep on what can I do today. And I think now I'm going to kind of segue us a little bit into some of the new features that we have to kind of take advantage of playing around in the system and seeing that data in action. So I'm going to jump in and start resharing here in 1 second with kind of our new data dashboards. Now,
Chris, while you're pulling that up, did you
Yep.
want me to share the poll?
Sure.
Okay, I'll end it now. 100% participation.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody out there. And I see we got a wide range of people, so it's always great to see. And I think with that comes kind of my first call out. So I'm coming in as, probably a more privileged user, or a user that has a view kind of across the campaign right now. So if I'm a charity and you're listening to this, know that my data dashboard is going to be linkable from that view that we were just on, where I can see all my charity demographics, my pledge information. If you're somebody who looks at the campaign, from a zone level or from all zones, you'll have a slightly different view, but you'll come in straight into, you'll each have your own pathway from your reporting section into your data dashboard. And so when you come in, you're going to be given the option to kind of pick what data do I want to look at. And so for today, I'm mostly going to focus on kind of the pledge data that we're making available for you. Know that this is kind of a first wave of data that we want, and we plan to make more available, more refined data for everybody to play with, because that's really the heart of this experience is what data do I get? How can I make good informed decisions for my organization to, increase donations, increase effectiveness in marketing. So I'll jump into that pledge data right now. And what you'll see that we have here is kind of a data wall. So you come in and we have a fully interactive data experience. What we're bringing to you first is kind of that high level look and feel of what we think is most beneficial for you to look at kind of on day by day level. But we have the ability to kind of drill in through a series of different visuals. As I talk about these, I'll call each of these individual graphs a widget. Some people might call them analyses. It all depends on the tool you typically use. But for today, one of these visuals we'll call a widget, and kind of the entire package we typically call kind of your data dashboard altogether. So when I come into this experience, again, I'm pulling off of that kind of daily feed. So when you come in every morning, you'll be able to see all the data updated. And like I said, it's going to automatically customize the experience to the data that you have access to in the systems today. So if I'm a charity, I'm going to see that slice of the pie limited just to my own organization. If I'm a federation, I'm going to see my federation and my members. If I'm an LFCC member, I'm going to see all of the charities in the zone that I'm, part of, and kind of expanding on out from there. So when I come in to anchor you, you have these visuals, and then you have a set of filters. If you're comfortable in Excel, it's going to be a pretty easy transition into this. They work and feel very similar with kind of tabbed workbooks, drop down filters. So right now today, I'm seeing by default, we're going to show you kind of the current campaign period and the last campaign period. So as you're looking at pledging, you always kind of have that benchmark of what did it look like last year and what does it look like today for me, so I can see where I'm trending on a lot of my metrics. Now, right now you see 2022 and 2023. Starting September 1st, it'll be 2023 and 2024. So that'll roll up dynamically for you there. If you ever need to expand the data, it's as simple as a click on the filters, right? I can expand, I can see all of my data, or I could shrink it down to just the data I specifically want to see related to the campaign. You're going to have ability to filter by zones, to filter by CFC code, the type of donor, the department, agency, and office. As you go through, know that there's some filters that are going to be somewhat dynamic, right? So for those of you who are aware and have been through kind of the department, agency, office mappings, there's hundreds of thousands of offices across the government. So if I know the office I want to go to, I can type it in. If I don't know, the system can't display 400,000 offices. So it's going to ask me to get a little bit more granular, right? So I'm going to pick an Air Force. I'm going to look at the 11th Wing. And then you'll see the drop down becomes available for me to multi-select as I limit some of those options. So it's just something to be aware of with a lot of data. Sometimes you do need a filter to be able to get consumable drop downs in some of these fields, probably largely the CFC code and those office locations. Within each widget, you're going to have the ability to kind of expand, make that kind of the center of your view. A lot of it is very interactive. So if I need to change how I'm looking at data, right? If I want to look at it from, start to finish, if I want to change kind of the scales of my X and Y axis, I have the ability to kind of do that right through the tool, to kind of manipulate it as I see fit, as I need to for my specific use case. I can kind of on a lot of these give a more granular view, right? If I need to zoom in and really see what happened in, week 14, 2022 looked great and I took a little bit of a drop in 2023. Is that because, I had Thanksgiving move a week, and that could be an explanation and it just picks right back up on week 15 and it evens out the balance. But those are really the concept of what we're trying to give each of the different stakeholders throughout this campaign the view so that you can start making those hypotheses and see them in action as you test them out. Within each of these widgets, not only can you maximize it, you can apply specific filters just to that widget if you need. And the cool part is you can always spit out a CSV or Excel kind of that data set. So if you've manipulated, played with it, and then need that data out of the system, you don't have to go straight to that raw data report I showed you before. You can get a much more consumable, concise version of that data set based upon what your organization might care about. So you're going to be able to see things like pace by week. You'll be able to see them across different zones, right? You can see this huge spike here in the national capital area. Obviously that zone, for those of you who don't know, got merged with another zone, the Chesapeake zone. So moving into 2024, you'll see kind of that replacement, that spike probably grow a little bit larger if you're one of those organizations in that area. You can kind of look at the campaign from a full scale, where do we hit dollars wise year over year? And then I love this visual. This is kind of like everything you could imagine you want to consume at high level numbers, whether I'm slicing it by where the payment's coming from, what my average donations are coming in through that channel, how much money I'm raising, broken up by employee, contractor, retirees. So this kind of is a lot at once, but it also gives you a lot of great metrics that you can drive off of. And similarly, these are all customizable, right? If I want to hide 2023, look at 2022, I can get that visual and just see the rolled up counts there as well. And every time I make a filter, it'll cascade through all of my widgets to give you that reflected data. Similarly, if maybe I'll just show you guys real quick for those charities in the audience that might not see as much of the picture of the pie, just to give you an example. If I kind of narrow down my hub, right, this is going to be my view more as a regular charity where I can see, yeah, pretty positive, right? In 2022, we started out at 21,000 and we were able to kind of increase off of that in 2023. For that charity view too, I love this kind of just heat map of it where you can really see where are my donor base, where can I see them actually geographically down to the zip code of where they work to really get a sense and a feel. And you can really see that it is kind of a nationwide effort throughout it. And you can really see where those big pockets are of donors and dollars for your organization. Outside of that, not that you have to stay on the homepage. I think that's kind of where most of that great data is. But if you need to drill deeper, get different views, you can tab across and you can kind of see each of those breakdowns, right? I can see a breakdown of how everything looks from a payroll card, ACH, each of my payment sources. And we kind of continue to see these get bigger and bigger, but obviously payroll is the number one way to give for a lot of donors. And payroll is, when you look at the data, the highest average gift. So you don't want to shut those away, but you want to give the ability for donors to give how they want to give with that idea of frictionless giving. So you can kind of see that play out in some of these. I can look at targets by department. So if I know, is my donor base really in the, DoD space, or they kind of, which department do I want to target as my greatest contribution for growth? Or I can look at it differently too and say, I had a great year here with my civilian Air Force and I took a drop off. So maybe I need to start looking for events and things like that in that area because I have a donor base there, but they just haven't reached out to me so far this year. So Again, it's all about giving you that data to make great informed decisions for, your organization or who you're trying to help represent, whether you're a charity or if you're in the government as a campaign manager, key workers trying to help drive the campaign. We'll give you slices kind of just high level to see kind of donors. I can see total donors, total amount raised. Here I can see I might have taken a dip in my overall donors over the year, but I have an increase in actual donations. We'll give you views where you can look at it kind of day by day throughout there and really hone into what that metric is. I'll also caveat to the group, we have more to come. So this is kind of just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to data. A lot of what we've built in the solution is a data lake to enable us to help make smarter and better decisions. So you'll see throughout the course of the campaign that we plan to offer new widgets that are going to be hitting your dashboards as well, and that we're going to continue to refine them as we see kind of campaign over campaign. What is the need or what's the gap in my data to make better informed decisions? So this is really a tool for all of our stakeholders to play with and really be able to see the data, but then know that there's more to come as we learn from it. So try and take a quick break here before I kind of jump into any of the other topics and just see if there was any chat items, Tony or Curtis, related to dashboards that we want to dig into real quick.
Yeah, Chris, I have a couple questions that popped up. The first one was, can this report have a calendar date instead of weeks for the campaign?
It's something that we've played with. So I'd love to hear kind of people's input. The challenging part about the calendar weeks is it might give you an unreal expectation. There's kind of pros and cons of each. When you look at it on a day-by-day basis, you don't really care if the campaign started on September 1st or if it started on September 15th. But knowing that historically that date has moved a bit in that month of September, it doesn't really necessarily always give you the best view looking year over year when you're looking at calendar time. Now, I think there is a counter argument to say, over this 4-month time period, if you shorten it and you have a 3-month, open enrollment for these donors, do people still give the same amount just in a shorter time period? So it's something we've explored. It's definitely doable in the data. I think we'll have to kind of take it and weigh the pros and cons about what's the best experience and just make sure people are consuming it, are educated on the pros and cons of different views.
Thank you. The second question is kind of twofold. Could you repeat where a charity goes to access this information and then show them where in their record they find the reports?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm a charity, right, the source of where I want to go when I come into my homepage is I'm going to start by just clicking my name here. That's going to bring me into my dashboard. So starting in September, for those users, you're going to see a big button right here to say my data dashboard. So I'm going to be able to link straight into come September 1. For everything else that's already in the system, kind of those housekeeping reminders I went through, if you scroll down to your pledge section, you'll be able to drill in and go into kind of the makeup for each of those campaigns. But my high level data is and be able to download my report. So this is that raw data report that I showed you earlier. The one I didn't key in on that you'll get at the end of each campaign is your donor information report too. So for those of the group who kind of were at some of the previous sessions, any donors making their donation to the CFC has the ability to share their information with the charity. And at the end of the campaign, all of that will be bundled up into this one donor download report.
And can you remind everyone what the URL is that charities would use to get to their account?
Yeah, it's cfccharities.opm.gov.
Thank you. I have a few more questions. I'm going to see if Tony has any before I continue. Hearing none. Robert has his hand up.
I do have my hand up. Yes. As a software developer, Chris, I am blown away by this. This is amazing. And I want it in production now. Could you remind us when you're going to production? Because the next question is going to be important for that.
So I would say some users have it today. So the users who are looking more at a zone level have been kind of over the summer months, looking at the data, testing out, getting some real-time feedback to our group to enhance the reports.
Yeah.
So some of you may have access and have already played around with it. It will be rolled out to all of the user base starting here on September 1st for everybody to go into play. And so that's data both historically for everybody as well as all the new data coming in the future.
Understood. Okay, I was hoping it would be there now so that people could start playing with it and actually drill in, which is the second question. Will these widgets access all of the data all the way back to whenever they signed up under this donor portal or the pledge charity portal 2017?
Yeah, so the first year of data that's in the system is going to be 2017 onwards. If your charity is applying new this year, you'll start seeing data for your organization September 1st. If your charity has been in for 3 years, you'll see all of that data available to you.
And if they are broken, if they were in for a year, then dropped out for a year, they'll obviously see a gap. But the most important thing is that they have access to all of the data from the system since it started in 2017, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
you can
Cool.
see it all layered. So if I expand it all, you'll see all of these layered on top of each other of what each of those weeks look like across all of them. It might be a little bit tough to visualize, so that we start you in just with a comparison of 2 years. But you can play around to your heart's desire if you want to look at
dude,
17 versus
kudos to
18
your
for all the
team.
data.
This is amazing. This is amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We always love to hear positive feedback, but we're always looking for ways to enhance and really give.
Yeah, and we won't know until
Yeah.
people start using it and get you that feedback. But man, I think people are going to be happy. Thank you so much.
So another question for you, Chris. For the reporting data by year that was presented, there was a group volunteer value among the results. Are there any changes in 2024 on accounting or tracking of volunteer values?
There is no change this year from what was rolled out in last year's group volunteer functionality. So that volunteer experience is consistent with what you saw last year in the system.
Thank you. And then my last question I have is, a charity said they only mark their local campaign zone. Should they be marking other zones outside of their service area?
I guess I'm not fully sure I understand the question.
I think
Can I
it
take
really.
a stab at it, Chris?
Sure.
Okay, so no, they wouldn't. If they're a local charity in one zone, they're in the campaign and listed in that zone. But the designation data, if they will get from wherever people give to them. So they don't have to sign up in every zone. Once they're in the database, anybody could search them and they can give to any charity anywhere. So they'll see the results no matter where the donor gives to them from.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, Chris, I'll let you finish the rest of your presentation, then I'll queue you up with some more questions soon.
Okay. So I'm just going to kind of jump and I'll just kind of conversationally talk about a few of the other features that are in there. This is really the heart and the breadth of kind of what we've been focus on making available to users this year. But I did want to touch on a few things. So, in terms of better data, and knowing that we have retiree populations that continue to grow, we are going to make available to donors coming in this year, if they are a retiree, to also be able to supply a little bit of additional information to help with some of the reporting, help understand where they are. So now retirees, besides just designating that they're a retiree, will also be able to tell you the department and agency that they're retired from, so you can start making those connections if it's useful for you. The other thing that we've always supported in the past, but we're going to enable in a little bit more streamlined experience, is some of those maybe larger donors that typically they might have had a donor advised fund that they already store donations to and they want to give to the CFC, or a donor that might have had a retirement fund where they want to make direct contributions. Now in the system, when a donor is coming in, they don't have to stay on paper if they're one of those type of donors. And there was kind of a little bit more manual process, a little bit more difficult for kind of those non-standard flows in the past, but they're also large donors, and we know that they can really impact kind of charities with just one donation. And so what we're going to roll out to those donors as they're coming into the system, they can now come online and start making those contributions. So if I'm want to come in, I can fill out my pledge form, pick out all my charities the way I would electronically today, but we're going to give them the ability in the system to kind of say, I have a payment coming from a third party provider. So I'm giving you all my information, and then I'm going to send you the payment separately for you to kind of link up and facilitate that experience. So we think it's going to be a little bit better for some of those large donors, some of those more complicated ways that people want to give to organizations in the future, which I think is pretty cool. I think I'm trying to pull up real quickly here for everybody, just pivot in, so you can kind of just see that experience. I know most of you probably aren't the actual donor who's coming in, but still knowing what a donor sees and kind of how they interact. So they'll now be able to come in and say, hey, I got a payment source that isn't electronic. It's not coming from my bank account. They'll be able to select that option and check out as normal, but we're going to give them that place to route that payment information. And then once we receive it, we'll link those two and get those payments in the system. So just a nice added feature for more frictionless giving on the donor side that we think is going to kind of be more beneficial for those more complicated use cases, especially as we continue to see kind of tax reform probably hit us over the next few years in the nonprofit space.
And if you're a campaign manager in many places, federal agencies, Securities and Exchange Commission, Department of Justice, all kinds of places, people have donor advised funds. Retirees are giving distributions out of their retirement savings. What Chris is just introducing here is a way to make that those kinds of gifts easier, because we want to make sure that your designations marry up with your contribution.
All right. Well, with that, I'll open the floor to any other questions. We can kind of feed them to me as you go, Curtis. And if there's other areas of the system I didn't touch on, people want to hear more about or see more about, happy to go there too if we have some questions.
Yeah, I just, oh, go on.
I'm sorry, I just have one question in the chat, and that was whether this was created by Power BI.
We do not use Power BI to do the dashboards. However, that technology is very similar to what we are using today. So if you're familiar with Power BI and how those analytics work, very similar concept, just a different product being used today.
So is Power Beehive HIV, is that used for marketing? Some for you accumulating and putting some of this data together, all this beautiful data that you all have put together? I just wanted to compliment you all on what you all have been doing and on the presentations that you all have here that eventually will be downloaded to those that are interested in having these slides. I know I would be one. But is that like POWERBEEHIV, Power Beehive? Is that how you?
So Power BI stands for Power Business Intelligence. That's a specific name brand of a product that Microsoft sells for data analytics. This is not Power BI. It's called QuickSight is the tool that we're using, but the concept is the same. It's basically a tool that allows you to aggregate mass amounts of data, categorize them, and basically slice and dice them in different views. So I think what you're seeing is kind of the dashboard product that comes out of it. And then kind of behind the scenes, as we see that there's a need in other areas to kind of expand views, we'll be positioned basically with that data lake to continue to build on different views and publish that out to the group.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
I have
No,
no
I
other
think
questions.
Go on. I was just gonna say, I think I heard in the last meeting that you all are gonna have a breakout session for some of the charities to get to know each other or something, or brainstorm. Did you not say that yesterday? Somebody?
Well, the presentation at 3 o'clock will be a guided, facilitated presentation, but you will have an opportunity to provide input.
Okay, thank you.
Lloyd Biley has a question.
Good afternoon. Chris, I'll just echo what Robert and everyone else has said. This is all really cool, and I can't wait to dive in and start doing some things. One quick question and then a comment. If a retired person comes in and starts an account, are they linked to their previous account when they were employed? Or as a retired person, are you starting all over with a new history and building from there?
It's a great question. It all depends on how the user accesses the system. So it is a good thing to know, right? You got to be informed on how the data looks to be able to make good decisions. And so, one of the things we encourage our donors to do is if they're making that transition, there's no reason that you have to abandon your current account, right? You just have to update your profile information on that account to reflect that you're now a retiree. So it's a designation right when every donor comes in for the first time in a year, and I can try and pull it up here real quick for everybody to kind of get a visual. Give me 1 second. So when you come in kind of for the first time in a campaign every year, we take all users to revisit their profile screen, even if nothing has changed. And you can simply come in and confirm I have no changes or make updates. If you come in with that same account and you say, I'm not in the Air Force anymore, right? I'm now moving myself to that retiree designation. That's where I can come in and automatically, once you go to a retiree, you select your annuitant provider. That's all we need to hook up your payment source. And that allows you to keep that same account, and we can see the life of your account as you go. We also kind of encourage people that you have the ability to kind of, even if your email address is changing, right, to go ahead and move with that email address. We can reassign you a new primary email address to that account if you had a work email and now it's a personal. So you don't have to abandon that account. Now, that being said, naturally, there are donors who say, I left the government, I still want to give to the CFC, and they come back in and they register again as a brand new user, right? So they moved from their .gov email and now they're on a Gmail account. And so from our perspective, it's tough to always know that that's the same donor when they make that distinction and transition. So we try to coach and we try to educate people that as you're moving different agencies, as you're moving to a different type of worker or retiree, you don't have to abandon that account. But when you look at the data, it definitely does happen that people will take both approaches. And so it may look like a new retiree donor, whereas just somebody who moved from, active employment to retirement.
And
Thanks.
Lloyd, if I could, as a retiree that did this transition, it was seamless. And the beauty is I get to go back and look at all of my pledges that I've ever done in the system since 2017. Works beautifully.
And just my quick suggestion would be maybe this fall at one of Tony's conference calls that he has, Chris, if you could join us later in the fall, and so then we have a chance to ask you questions and things as they arise when we're using this, that would be great. Thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to join.
Any other questions for Chris? All right, hearing none. I want to thank you, Chris, for sharing this. This is very impressive. It's a big step forward, as everyone's telling you, and we definitely appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.